لا تعجل بالقرآن من قبل أن يقضى إليك وحيه وقل رب زدني علما.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. So carrying on then with Al-Aqeedah Al-Wasitiyyah of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, we got to the section now where he said, قوله وما وصف به نفسه في أعظم آية في كتاب الله حيث يقول الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. He says here now, وما وصف به نفسه في أعظم آية في كتاب الله, and that which Allah attributed to himself in the greatest ayah of the Quran. In the greatest ayah of the Quran. And of course, the greatest ayah of the Quran is Ayatul Kursi. We know that the ayat of the Quran, they have different levels of virtues. Al-Quran yatafadal, or al-ayat, ayatul sifat tatafadal, that the ayat of the Quran, the different parts of the Quran, they have different levels of virtues. Yatafadal al-Quran. So for example, Ayatul Kursi is greater than, for example, Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab wa Tab. Ayatul Kursi has greater meanings of the names and attributes of Allah, talking about Al-Asma'u wa Sifat, whereas Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab wa Tab is talking about a mushrik and the end result of the mushrikeen in the hellfire. So there are differences in the ayat in terms of their meanings, and that's where you have the differences in their virtues. In terms of the Quran, all of it is Kalamullah. So there is no difference between the ayat of the Quran in that respect. In the respect that all of the Quran, including the ayat about the mushrikun and the ayat about the hellfire, the ayat about the munafiqun, all of the ayat of the Quran, they are the speech of Allah. So there is no difference between them from that respect. But in terms of the different topics and meanings of the ayat, then they are different. The ayat about al-asma' wa sifat, about the names and attributes of Allah, they are greater in virtue than the ayat that have the meanings about the mushrikun and the hellfire. So Ayatul Kursi, it is the greatest ayah of the Quran. So what do we have in this particular chapter of the Quran? This particular ayah of the Quran. There is a hadith, an evidence, the hadith in Sahih Muslim from Ubay ibn Ka'ab radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked أبي بن كعب أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سأل أبي بن كعب قال أي آية في كتاب الله أعظم. He asked him, which ayah in the book of Allah is the greatest? فقال له الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. So then he mentioned to him this ayah. So this hadith in Sahih Muslim is an evidence that the Ayatul Kursi is the greatest ayah in the Quran. ففي هذا الحديث دليل على أن القرآن يتفاضل كما دل عليه أيضا حديث سورة الإخلاص. This therefore indicates, like we've just said, that the Quran has different virtues in the different ayat, in their meanings, just like we already spoke about Surah Al-Ikhlas, إِنَّهَا لَتَعْدِلُ ثُلُثَ الْقُرْآنِ, that it is equivalent to a third of the Quran. That is from the virtues mentioned about Surah Al-Ikhlas. So here there are these virtues mentioned about the ayah here, Ayatul Kursi. So you have to remember the important point there. باعتبار المتكلم به فإنه لا يتفاضل لأن المتكلم به واحد وهو الله عز وجل. In terms of it all being the speech of Allah, the Quran is equal. All of it is the speech of Allah. But باعتبار مدلولاته وموضوعاته فإنه يتفاضل. But in terms of what it is indicating and what the subject matters are, that's where the differences are between the ayat and the virtues of the ayat. So now here then, قول المؤلف حيث يقول الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. الآية في هذه الآية يخبر الله بأنه منفرد بالألوهية. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the very beginning of Ayatul Kursi tells us that He is the one and single one to be worshipped. He is the one to be singled out with worship. Al-Uluhiyya, ifradullah bi'af'alina bi'ibadatina, that we single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our worship, with our actions. So right at the beginning of Ayatul Kursi, Allahu la ilaha illahu, that there is no deity worthy of worship in truth except He. There is no deity worthy of worship in truth except He. Allah, He is the one. He is the one that there is no other deity worthy of worship and truth except Him. This is the foundation of the religion. This is the basis of the religion, the basis of Tawheed. So this first ayah, it indicates to us about the oneness of Allah. This first section in this ayah indicates to us the oneness of Allah. ففي هذه الآية يخبر الله بأنه منفرد بالألوهية وذلك من قوله لا إله إلا هو, that there is no deity worthy of worship except He. بمعنى لا معبود بحق إلا الله, that there is no deity worthy of worship in truth except Allah. As for deities that are worshipped upon lies, then there are many. There are many. The deities, those aliha that the mushrikun they have, and they worship them upon lies, not upon truth, not upon the fact that they are deserving of worship, upon lies. And they worship the sun and the moon and the cows and all types of different affairs. But the one who is deserving of worship in truth, then that is Allah alone. لا معبود بحق إلا الله. There is no deity worthy of worship in truth except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this sentence, لا إله إلا هو, هذه الجملة تفيد الحصر. That type of sentence in Arabic indicates restriction. Restriction. وطريقة النفي والإثبات هذه من أقوى صيغ الحصر. And having the affirmation and negation that we spoke about before, when you do the affirmation and the negation together, that gives you the strongest. It is one of the strongest forms of indicating restriction. What is the restriction we are talking about here? What is the restriction? That only Allah is deserving of the worship. Restricted to Allah alone and rejected for all others besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the opening section. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. We've already spoken about the name Allah. The name Allah, the correct opinion is it comes from al-ilah, and that is from aliha ya'lahu al-ma'luh, meaning abada ya'budu al-ma'bud, the one who is to be worshipped, Allah. So then it goes on to the two names, al-hayyu, al-qayyum. Al-hayy, the ever-living, al-qayyum, the self-sufficient. Al-hayyu ay dhul hayatil kamilah. Allah is al-hayy, the one with the perfection of life. The one with the perfection of life. Al-mutadhammina li jami'i sifatil kamal, which is inclusive of all of the attributes of perfection. The life of perfection, a life of perfection, which is inclusive, it includes, incorporates all of the attributes of perfection. لم تسبق بعدم ولا يلحقها زوال ولا يعتريها نقص بوجه من الوجوه. And when we talk about Allah being Al-Hayy, the ever-living, in perfection, then there is no lack of existence prior to this. With us in creation, we are non-existent, then we come into life. But that is not the case when we speak of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no such thing as non-existence and then coming into life. No. Allah is the ever-living with the perfection and completion of life. No such thing as non-existence prior to life. That is us in creation, non-existent, and then you come into life. Not with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And neither is the life of Allah attributed to any end. Us in creation, once again, here our lives on this world come to an end. But the life of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon perfection and completion, there is no such thing as an end. And on top of that, in terms of the perfection of the life of Allah, there is no deficiency that comes upon it. Our lives in creation, full of deficiencies. But the life of Allah, when we say Al-Hayy, the ever-living perfection of life with no deficiencies from any aspect in any way. لا يعتريها نقص من الوجه بوجه من الوجوه. That there is no deficiency which occurs from any angle, from any aspect. So Al-Hayyu, this is one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Hayyu min Asma'illah, وقد تطلق على غير الله. This is one of the names of Allah, Al-Hayy. And you can sometimes use that name for other than Allah. It's possible that this name may be used for other than Allah. قال تعالى يخرج الحي من الميت. Like in the Quran, when Allah mentioned about His creation, He brings out the life from the death. So there is life in creation. But, however, لكن ليس الحي كالحي ولا يلزم من الاشتراك في الاسم التماثل في المسمى. And we've already spoken about this. Just because the title or the name is the same, it does not mean that there is any resemblance or comparison. There is no tamathul, no comparison or resemblance. The life in creation is not in any way comparable to the perfection and completion of the life of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is Al-Hayy, أي الدائم الباقي الذي لا سبيل للفناء عليه. The one who is ever living and there is no possibility of an end. The ever living, Al-Hayy, with no possibility of any end. Whereas us in creation live and die. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we say Al-Hayy, then that is the perfection of life, ever living with no end and no prior beginning or non-existence before it. Then also Al-Qayyum. Al-Qayyum, this is with the meaning the one who is self-sufficient and sustains others. What's the English they give in your books? Al-Qayyum? Huh? What's the English they give for Al-Qayyum? Al-Qayyum. That's it, the sustainer? So, they say the sustainer. But the meaning of Al-Qayyum is the one who is self-sufficient and sustains others. So self-sufficient and sustains others. They say they're the sustainer, but the one who is self-sufficient and sustains others. Because Al-Qayyum, ay Al-Qa'im, binafsihi al-muqimu lima siwahu. Self-sufficient and sustaining others. So Allah is self-sufficient, meaning Allah does not require anything from the creation. But He is the one who sustains the creation. Al-Qayyum. And this is على وزن فعيول وهذه من صيغ المبالغة وهي مأخوذة من القيام. So this is one of the forms of, in the Arabic language, one of the patterns or one of the scales that indicate excess. So Allah is the one greatly sustaining His creation and in complete ability of self-sustaining and sufficiency for Himself. So there is an element of greatness in that affair. So Al-Qayyum, the meaning of it is Al-Qa'imu binafsihi. فَقِيَامُهُ بِنَفْسِهِ يَسْتَلْزَمْ إِسْتِغْنَاؤُهُ عَنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. So firstly, that Allah is self-sufficient means that Allah is in absolutely no need to anyone besides. Allah has no need or requirement or dependency on anyone, anything. Completely self-sufficient. لا يحتاج إلى أكل ولا شرب ولا غيرها وغيره لا يقوم بنفسه بل هو محتاج إلى الله عز وجل في إيجاده وإعداده وإمداده. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no requirements. It is not like us in creation, we need food and we need drink. Allah does not require any affair. But everyone else besides Allah, us in the creation, we are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is not in need of anyone, but we are in need of Allah. So that is the first meaning, al-qa'imu bi nafsihi. And the second meaning, al-qa'imu ala ghayrihi. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who sustains others, sustains His creation. In the Quran it mentions in one of the ayat, أَفَمَنْ هُوَ قَائِمٌ عَلَى كُلِّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ. The one who is sustaining every soul for what it achieves, for what it gains. فَالْمُقَابِلْ مَحْذُوفٌ تَقْدِيرُهُ كَمَنْ لَيْسَ كَذَلِكَ, is the one who sustains you like the one who cannot? And clearly the answer is no. The one who sustains you is your Creator and your Lord. The one who cannot sustain you, then he is nothing. That is nothing, a deity upon falsehood. وَالْقَائِمُ عَلَى كُلِّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ هُوَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. And so the one who sustains you upon everything you gain, then that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلِهَذَا يَقُولُ الْعُلَمَاء القيوم هو القائم بنفسه القائم على غيره. And that's why the scholars say Al-Qayyum is the one who is self-sufficient and also the one providing sufficiency and sustenance and sustaining others. وَإِذَا كَانَ قَائِمًا عَلَى غَيْرِهِ. And so if we understand now that Allah is the one who is the sustainer of others, the sustainer of the creation, if we understand that, لَزِمَ أَنْ يَكُونَ غَيْرُهُ قَائِمًا بِهِ. This therefore indicates that all of the creation we are sustained by Allah. If Allah is the one who sustains the creation, then we, in other words, are the ones who are in requirement of sustenance and to be sustained by Him. So for example, قال الله تعالى وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَن تَقُومَ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ بِأَمْرِهِ. And from His signs is that the heavens and the earth, they are established by His command. Meaning they are there and they are sustained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَهُوَ إِذًا كَامِلُ الصِّفَاتِ وَكَامِلُ الْمُلْكِ وَالْأَفْعَالِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is complete in His attributes, in perfection of His attributes, and in perfection and completion of His dominion, of His kingdom, and of His actions. فَهَذَانِ الْإِسْمَانِ. So these two names, Al-Hayyu, Al-Qayyum, عليهما مدار الأسماء الحسنى وإليهما ترجع معانيها جميعها. These two names, the scholars have said, all of the other names of Allah revolve around them. All of the other names of Allah revolve around them. And all of the meanings of the other names of Allah return back around them. Around Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum. فَإِنَّ الْحَيَاةَ مُسْتَلْزِمَ لِصِفَاتِ الْكَمَالِ. Because Allah being Al-Hayy, the one with the perfection of life, indicates there must be a perfection of the attributes. There must be a perfection of the attributes. And the attributes, they are there from all of the other names of Allah. Every name has an attribute, and there are more attributes. All of those are indicated by the perfection of the life of Allah. There must be the perfection of attributes to Allah. وَالْقَيُّومُ مُتَضَمِّنٌ لِكَمَالِ غِنَاهُ وَكَمَالِ قُدْرَتِهِ. And the fact that Allah is Al-Qayyum, then this incorporates the perfection of Allah's self-sufficiency, not needing anyone or anything, and the perfection of His ability, the perfection of the power and ability of Allah. فإنه القائم بنفسه لا يحتاج إلى من يقيمه بوجه من الوجوه وهذا من كمال غناه بنفسه عما سواه وهو المقيم لغيره فلا قيام لغيره إلا بإقامته وهذا من كمال قدرته وعزته. انتهى من كلام ابن القيم بتصرف. So Ibn al-Qayyim generally paraphrased, he said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is self-sufficient and He is the one who does not require any form of sustenance from others. Rather, He is upon perfection and He is the one who sustains others and they are the ones who cannot sustain themselves without Him. So this indicates the perfection of the life of Allah and the sustenance, or Allah being the sustainer. Also, it is mentioned in a narration, هذان الاسمان هما الاسم الأعظم. In some narrations, the scholars, they have the difference, al-ismul a'zam, the greatest name, what is it? So some of them mention Allah is al-ismul a'zam. But there are also statements of the scholars, al-hayyul qayyum is al-ismul a'zam. So here, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, he says, al-ismul a'zam is these two, إِذَا دُعِيَ اللَّهِ بِهِ أَجَابٍ. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is supplicated to, you call upon Allah with these names, then Allah replies. وَلِهَذَا يَنْبَغِي لِلْإِنسَانِ فِي دُعَائِهِ أَنْ يَتَوَسَّلَ بِهِ. And that's why it is suitable that a person, when he makes dua, that he seeks that dua to be answered via the names of Allah. So, فَيَقُولْ يَا حَيّْ يَا قَيُّومُ. وَقَدْ ذُكِرَ فِي الْكِتَابِ الْعَزِيزِ فِي ثَلَاثَةِ مَوَاضِعٍ. And these two names have been mentioned together in the Quran in 3 places. Al-Hayyu, Al-Qayyum, mentioned in the Quran together in 3 places. One of them is Ayatul Kursi. Another one, الثاني في سورة آل عمران الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. At the beginning of Surah Al Imran, at the start, ayah number 2. And الثالث in Surah طه وعنت الوجوه للحي القيوم. And that is the third, Taha 111. So these two names indicate the perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after that, it goes on, حيث يقول الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. That Allah is not overcome by slumber nor sleep. Allah is not overcome by slumber nor sleep. The slumber, لا تأخذه سنة, that is النعاس. That when a person is sleepy, the slumber. When a person is sleepy and fatigued and you're falling, your head is falling, you have that slumber and fatigue upon you. And that is something which occurs before the actual sleep. Before you actually fall asleep, you're in a state of slumber and tiredness and fatigue. So that is meant by that. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. No, the slumber, that fatigue does not overcome Allah, and neither the actual sleep. وَلَمْ يَقُلْ, and notice, Allah did not say here, لَمْ يَقُلْ لَا يَنَامُ. Allah didn't say that He does not sleep. Allah didn't say that He does not sleep. He didn't phrase it like that in the Quran. It is phrased as He is not overcome by slumber or sleep. And that is because لأن النوم يكون باختيار والأخذ يكون بالقهر. Because when you sleep, that is by your choice. You choose when to sleep. But as for being overcome by something, then that is out of your choice. To be overcome. Maybe a person hasn't slept for so many days. Eventually you can't do anything. Your body shuts down. You are overcome by that slumber and that sleep. So Allah mentions He is not overcome by anything. He is not overwhelmed by the slumber or the sleep. وَالنَّوْمِ مِنْ صِفَاتِ النَّقْصِ. Sleeping is from the attributes of deficiency. The fact that you have to sleep, it is an attribute of deficiency. فَالنَّوْمِ مِنْ صِفَاتِ النَّقْصِ. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari in Sahih Muslim, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنَامُ وَلَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ أَنْ يَنَامُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not sleep, and it would not be suitable or appropriate or correct for Allah to sleep. Because sleeping is an attribute of deficiency. You are overcome by fatigue and you cannot operate until you sleep. It is a deficiency. وهذه صفة من صفات النفي وقد سبق أن صفات النفي لا بد أن تتضمن ثبوتا وهو كمال الضد. The fact that Allah has mentioned here sleep or slumber and sleep does not overcome him. Is this affirmation or negation? Negation. It is negation. No sleep, no slumber overcomes him. We've already mentioned before that the negations are not there for the sake of the negation. They are there for the sake of highlighting the completion and the perfection of the affirmation, the opposite. So the صفات النفي لا بد أن تتضمن ثبوتا وهو كمال الضد. والكمال في قوله لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم كمال الحياة والقيومية. And the fact that Allah tells us sleep and slumber does not overcome him, that general negation, is affirming the opposite, that therefore Allah has the perfection of life and has the perfection of being Al-Qayyum, completely self-sufficient, not in need of any sustenance, not in need of sleep, not in need of rest. Allah is completely self-sufficient from any of those affairs. So the fact that Allah tells us this negation, it is affirming the perfection of Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum, affirming the perfection of that. لأنه من كمال حياته أن لا يحتاج إلى النوم. Because from the perfection of life is that Allah does not require sleep. ومن كمال قيوميته أن لا ينام. And from the perfection of Allah being self-sufficient and sustaining others, that is He, or is that He does not require sleep. لأن النوم إنما يحتاج إليه المخلوقات الحية لنقصها. Sleep is something that the creation requires due to our deficiency. لأنها تحتاج إلى النوم من أجل الاستراحة من تعب سبق واستعدادة القوة لعمل المستقبل. So a person needs sleep and rest due to fatigue that overcomes you from actions that you've been doing, or you need to rest and sleep to prepare yourself for future activities and actions that you're going to do. ولما كان أهل الجنة كاملي الحياة كانوا لا ينامون. And so it has been mentioned that the people of paradise, they are given a perfection of life that we do not have here. So in paradise, they do not sleep. They are given that level of perfection in paradise compared to what we have here, and so they do not sleep. And there are narrations. الشيخ ذلك الآثار. So this is an affirmation, therefore, of the perfection of Allah through mentioning this negation. Through mentioning this negation, no sleep, no slumber overcomes him. It therefore indicates the perfection of the opposite, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the perfection of life without any deficiency and does not require any sleep and is not overcome by fatigue or tiredness. So remember the principle, when a negation occurs, it is general, because the real purpose behind it is to give you the affirmation of the perfection in the opposite of it. Then after that, he goes on to mention, the author mentions the full Ayatul Kursi, لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. That to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belongs everything that is in the heavens and the earth. Everything that is in the heavens and the earth. So, lahu allam hadhihi lil milk, that this is indicating possession, belonging to Allah. Belonging to Allah is all of this perfection of kingdom and dominion. ما في السماوات من الملائكة والجنة وغير ذلك مما لا نعلمه. That which is in the heavens, all in the dominion and kingdom of Allah, from the angels and paradise and other affairs that maybe we are not aware of. وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ كُلِّهَا. And everything in the earth is in the kingdom and dominion of Allah, from all of the creation within the earth. الْحَيَوَانُ مِنْهَا وَغَيْرُ الْحَيَوَانِ. All of the animals and other than the animals. Also, the fact that it mentions here مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ, what is in the heavens. Is that singular or plural? Plural. So that indicates تفيد أن السماوات عديدة وهو كذلك. وقد نص القرآن على أنها سبع. قل من رب السماوات السبع ورب العرش العظيم. And so it indicates there are multiple heavens, and in the Quran it indicates that there are 7 heavens, and so it mentions, say, who is the Lord of the 7 heavens and the great throne. But what about al-ard? As-samawat, clear in the Quran, قُلْ مَنْ رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ السَّبْعِ. But what about the ard? Is it just 1 or is it 7? 7? So here it mentions وَالْأَرَضُونَ أَشَارَ الْقُرْآنُ إِلَىٰ أَنَّهَا سَبْعٌ بِدُونِ تَصْرِيحٍ. In the Quran it mentions that the earths are 7 without explicitly mentioning it. وَصَرَّحَتْ بِهَا السُّنَّةِ. But in the Sunnah it is explicitly mentioned. So Allah said in the Quran, اللَّهُ الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنَّ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the 7 heavens, and from the earth similar to that. So if Allah created 7 heavens and then similarly from the earth, how many earths then? 7 earths, it could be assumed. مثلهن في العدد دون الصفة. Like that in terms of the number of them, the number of the earths. And also there are evidences in the Sunnah which indicate this also, about the earths being 7. But what does it mean that there are 7 earths? What is the meaning of 7 earths? Anyone? What is 7 earths? Are there other earths like this earth? Or what's the meaning?
7 layers.
7 layers? There are differences. The scholars have explained different explanations about the 7 earths. So some of them say, maybe there are 7 earths, like this earth, there are other earths. But others have said maybe the layers. You know, if you do geography, they tell you about the mantle and the crust and all the layers, and you go down to the core layers of the earth. They say maybe the 7 layers of the earth. Others, they say maybe it's the continents, the qarat, the different continents on the earth, Asia, Europe, America, 7 lands on the earth. Maybe these are different explanations the scholars have given regarding what the 7 earths may be. So we have to conclude upon that today then. We'll continue with the next section next week, insha'Allah ta'ala. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.